Thomas, thank you very much for inviting us into this cellar. Tell me about this place that we're in here.
Our cellar was built in the start of the 2000 and was made in the style like was in the oldest cellars in this region. And we included in them a lot of wood barrels and a lot of art, the painted barrels.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of the barrels were painted. Yeah, so is that traditional or is that something kind of new?
It's not a tradition, but in start of 2000, my father, with a collaboration with Art Colony, which was in Medana at Klinet's house, then we invited some painters from all around the world. In the start, to Slovenian painters, and then we start with 1 week of painting on the barrels.
I think the room I'm staying in Šmartno, they called Art Colony. So is that where the artists would come and stay?
This coming from originally from Medana, but in Šmartno you have the art house, the Kulturna hiša, which is a cultural house, and from 2014, the same day, are in this group of art house and art colonies, which are all around the region, Brda and the same San Vipava Valley.
So this winery has been in the family. You're the 5th generation?
Yes, I'm the 5th generation. Start from the grandfather of my grandfather in the finish of 19th century, like around 1890. They made his first wine here in this house, and then in start of 20th century, in the middle of the World War, we have the first photo, which was made from military, from when they growing our help to us in the harvest in one small vineyard, and this was in 1917.
Wow. So, and then you have now, there's 5 brothers, right? You're one of 5?
Yes, in this moment, the wine cellar and the wine estate is managed by me and other 4 brothers and my father.
And what is the philosophy for your wines? What approach do you take?
The important philosophy of our house is that we work with a lot of local grapes from the old vineyards, and then we look that all of the wine are with nice taste and that are very drinkable then.
And the label is Šturek. Tell me if I pronounce it correctly.
In our label, practically is Šturek, which is in our dialect means means cricket, and is with violin because in Slovenian fairy tales, cricket play a violin. But originally, Šturek means something other.
What did it mean?
And it means cockroach.
Yeah, I saw a big statue outside in the courtyard of a cricket playing a violin.
Yes.
So that's it's interesting. So then that's
yes, this was made from one artist, young artist, Ariel Strukel, which is here from Vipava Valley.
Yeah, and you make many different types of wines and styles of wine. So what are the different ranges that you make?
We make 3 different ranges of wine. One is the fresh or classic line, like made in stainless steel or in big oak barrels. Then we have the second range, which is made in new and used oak with minimum aging of 1 year. And then the third line are our special wines, which are with long maceration or wine which are made totally in different style and with long aging.
Are you the oldest brother?
I'm the second one.
The second one.
Yes.
And so with 5 brothers growing up together, what was it like in a wine business, wine world? Was there? When did you start learning about wine? From the time you can remember? Or?
I'm started very young. I make my first wine when I was 12, but first wine for the market when I was 15.
In other words, a wine that you crafted, that you created when you were 15?
Yes.
Wow.
And this was first for the market, and then with 17, practically all wines made for the market in our house was from my hand, and with help of my father and my brothers.
So did all the brothers decide together that they want to stay in the family business, or was it one at a time?
You know, when you're a teenager, then you like to do everything, not only the wine. I started to help my father with 12 years and less, and then I automatically was involved in them, and was like a natural selection. Then I was start to be a winemaker, but then the other brothers helped me, and then all of them have some different kind of position in our wine estate.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine one has to maybe run the business a little bit.
Yes,
one has to manage the employees. One has to figure out how to make the wine. Marketing might be another.
Yes, one have work more with the tasting at our house. Then one is working with the machines in the vineyards. One is make hand works in the vineyards, and I'm the winemaker here. The youngest one is like manages us, and our father is check all of them.
Yeah, and I say your father's still involved very much in the.
He's retired, but he's like it's a little bit like a boss.
Yeah. Maybe we call him back in the U.S. The chairman of the board. What do you think wine means to people? What do you think? How does it impact their lives?
It's a big impact because when you start it with a young guy, that this is a style of life. It's not only a job, because this from hobby start to be a job, and then it's style of life.
And your wines, are they exported out of Slovenia? Where do they go in the world?
We export them in Japan, in China, in a lot of European country, ex-Yugoslavian country, then little export in United States, but I think this is all.
How many bottles of wine do you produce on an average season?
In this moment, we produce around 100,000 bottles.
Yeah.
Because this depends by the year, because it's not every year the same. Because in 2016 and 17, the production was less than normally, less 30% than normally, and for this, in this moment, we produce around 100,000 bottles.
And is it mostly white varietals or red or both?
In this moment, we have 70% white varieties and 30% red.
You do a lot of blending of grapes?
I'm a big lover of blended wine, and for this, we do some 7 grape variety wines and then 7 blends.
And I see also, I was looking at a barrel over here that had a like plexiglass so you could see in, and it was the whole grape, like the whole berry, and
yes,
it didn't seem to be smashed. So what is that?
This is one special wine which is called Contra, and this is a blend of Rebula and Chardonnay, and for this one we do everything handly. Every time in our house is handling.
So everything's done by hand?
Yes, everything by hand, and then the same with the stem handling, then put in this barrel, and we do one long maceration.
So you're not crushing the grape completely? You just
Never. We then just feel the clean part of the wine.
Wow, because I saw there's still, like, I'm seeing the whole grape basically, and then I'm seeing a lot of juice, a lot of the wine, and it separates over time.
Yes.
And what does that do for the character of the wine?
This make them some special character. It's like a macerated wine, but it's more an extraction from the skin than the maceration.
And the experience of the wine? How will that taste different when you drink it?
The taste have a little bit more tannins, but in the same time have a lot of freshness, fruitness, and then in aftertaste give you some notes that the wine was macerated for a long time. It's more phenolic style of the wine.
Yeah. And why do you call it Contro?
Because it's total different style of winemaking, which is normally in our house. And it's named Contra because you like or you don't like them.
You either love it or you don't like
yes.
it. Yeah. And what do you think Sturek is most known for?
For 5 brothers.
Do you make a Five Brothers wine?
Yes, it's one, but it's with screw cap. It's one struna. It's like strings, 5 strings.
5 strings. Oh, that's interesting.
Which is a story of 5 brothers, 5 vineyards, and 5 different wines inside.
Is there a story that maybe you can share growing up that you think might be interesting?
One story was how we start with the winemaking here, the serious winemaking when I was 17 then. And my father come in the cellar, we buy new machines for filter. It was one very huge one with 3 other guys. It was like a machine which was a cost of $60,000. And he say, I don't know how it's working. It's new machine, it's new technology. You start and work, and from this day, I working every day in the cellar. And he just come, finish of the harvest, and try the wine.
So the idea was, oh, the kids understand the technology.
Yes.
So you're 17, and he just said, here's the machine, go to work?
Yes, but in this moment, I don't use a lot of technology, less than him.
Wow. And have you added more technology since then?
We have practically the same technology like 15 years ago, or maybe change some new machines in new one, but the other things are practically the same.
Yeah. Now the harvest is going on right now, although last night we had big thunderstorms and rain. So what will happen now that this is going on? Does it stop the harvest or?
With the stop, we expect very nice vintage and very good wines. Where go too long, that we expect a lot of healthy problem of the grape, and then we need to pick them very, very fast and put in the cellar. And
yeah, because it was interesting because we've been here for a while and it was sunny every day, and we thought, oh, this is always sunny here. But then we discovered last night the big rain moved in, and it looks like it's raining all day today.
The typical of this region is there's coming a lot of storm, because we are practically the border region, and the Collio is practically the finish of Mediterranean and start of the Alps, and then is in the summertime normally is a big collapse from the air from the Alps and air from the Mediterranean, which makes, especially in the afternoon, a huge storms.
Wow. And how many more weeks do you think the harvest will go on?
Depends on the vintage, because when it's very sunny in the harvest, we make like 2 months. When it's normally it's like 1 month.
So it holds things up when it's raining, yeah. And so you pick, what grapes did you pick first? Which style of grape or which variety?
Here in this region, normally we start with Pinot Noir and Pinot Grigio, and then continue with a lot of other grapes, and then normally the last of the whites is Rebula, and the last of red is Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot.
Do you build your Merlot and Cabernet in a Bordeaux style?
First, when I was more young, I built more in Bordeaux style, but in this moment we look more that we make Bordeaux style, not Bordeaux more.
So you have your own style for these varietals. And what is that style like compared to Bordeaux?
In last years in Bordeaux, Merlot coming more ripe and coming more, more wild and powerful. And
so you had bigger fruit in the wine?
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Very ripe fruit.
Yeah. So now, how do you see the future of your winery? Where do you think it will go, or what do you want to see happen?
We like to continue in this way and to stay in the same quantity, but increase then every year more and more the same to top quality, and with the wines with personality, and continue with the local grapes, which is important for us.
Do you hope that your children will want to stay in this business?
I hope.
Yeah.
First we need to make the children, and then...
Just like the wine, you can figure out how to do that, I'm sure. Tomasz, thank you very much for inviting us in and sharing your story.
Thank you. I hope that you enjoyed here and in our region and in our wine estate.
Thank you.
Pinot.
And how often do you have to stir it? How many times a day?
3 times.
3?
Per day.
Yeah, per day.
Wow.
So everything is wet.
And how long will it stay in this barrel? A month?
7 to 10 days.
7.
Oh.
Yes.
Yes. Can you tell how the wine's going to be already by tasting this?
A little bit,
A
yes.
little bit?
Ma ja veš malo roto sto.
Hästi isto.
Ne, hrota.
Yes.
Od domače.
Oh, nice.
Vidiš, že?
Wow.
Starting to take the color from the skin.
Yeah.
now.
Nemo še njemu, da boš probal, ne?
Probi.
Try
Yeah.
it. Try
Test.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just still sweet.
Umetno.
It's like a juice.
It's good. Very nice.
Jakob, vidiš?
Okay.
To je.
How long has it been in this barrel so far?
2 days.
2 days?
Just today now.
Yeah.
Color 4 days. Perfect.
Yes?
Yes.
Because we started to harvest the Pinot Gris this week. Yeah.
And when this separates, this is going to be more white. It's going to be, what color will it be in the end?
Normally it's more like a little bit copper color. but
Copper, the
little
Pinot Gris,
bit. It's
yeah.
just it's a yellow with a copper slides.
Are these the first, the Pinot Gris, is that the first grapes you harvest or something before this?
As the first was Pinot Noir, and this is the second one.
Okay, it's the
with-
second. Yeah.
But this is the selection from one vineyard, and this was practically picked this Thursday.
Oh, okay, yeah. And how big is the barrel?
600 liters.
600 liters, okay.
It's a combination French and Slavonian oak.
It's warm, so that means that the fermentation will start,
Yeah.
and it's starting slowly.
So this is the maceration process.
Yes.
So what does that mean exactly?
That means that you fermented the grape in the contact with the skin. That's like this is a white wine making the style of the red wine.
So basically it's keeping skin contact for a
Yes.
little while and then
Yes.
that will add tannins to the wine
Add tannins and color.
and color.
The principally the maceration was made for extract the color from the red grape.
I see. So sometimes what happens with other white grapes, they just get the juice and go right to stainless steel.
Yes.
They don't let the skin contact happen. Yeah.
Yes. If you make if you put Pinot Grigio, just press them and put in the stainless steel, then it's like more gold color with a little bit of sides of copper, but
Why do you choose to do this process instead of the other one?
we choose to have one wine which we try, one Pinot Grigio, to try to have more than 10 years in the bottle.
So yeah, because of the skin contact and the tannins, you can
Yes.
lay it down longer. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it can mature.
Več vsega.
Yeah. Very nice. I find it really endearing when I see a family affair when it comes to winemaking. Seeing how siblings grew up together, parents that raised them, and how they all get into this family business, and it's called wine, and producing wine, and then distributing wine in the world. Something that I think is unique, something very special, and something that's heartwarming. So I hope you enjoyed that. What are some of the basic rules for pairing wine with food?
It's looking at what the food brings, so looking at the fatness component, the texture, the ingredients. Usually the fattier, the oilier, they require a little bit more acidity. So you're always kind of playing opposite sides. If the food has a lot of one thing, you're looking for the wine to provide the opposite.
So you're trying to create balance, basically.
You're trying to create balance.
But I hear, and tell me if these rules are true, like, I mean, some of them are pretty obvious. I think, like, you want a red wine with meat, at least red meat, white wine with fish. So if you could talk maybe in some of those general rules, white wines pair typically better with, and red wines pair typically better with? And I know which grape, which varietal, that will matter too.
So white wines are better paired with lighter dishes, usually with the fish, just because there is not a heavy component of fruit, and the acidity in white wines tends to be a little higher. And so you are balancing the fish or appetizer or the pasta with a wine that can only provide a little bit of balance and cleaning of your mouth.
So let's talk about pasta, because I love the pasta in your restaurant, and you always are picking the perfect wines to go with whatever the menu is that night. So I've seen sometimes that people do like a lighter red wine, maybe a Chianti or something with pasta, but sometimes it could be a white wine with pasta too. Does red sauce matter versus maybe a garlic and oil sauce?
Yeah, so the pasta in itself is a white canvas, is the sauce that is paired with the pasta that dictates for me what wine should be had.
So it's not pasta, it's the sauce on the pasta that
It's the
dictates.
sauce on the pasta. So if I have a red sauce, then usually the tomatoes already have a high acidity, and I might want a red wine or a white wine with a lower acidity.
Right.
But if I start putting maybe a bolognese with some meat, or I start putting maybe some cream, then I need to get a little bit more acidity from the wine in order to compensate this. If I go very fresh with just garden vegetables, then I might need a wine that has a little bit more fruit to elevate a little bit.
In examples that it would be some white wines like a Sauvignon Blanc, or what would you consider more fruit, and would it be in the white varietal or red?
Either way, I think mostly we associate acidity with white wines and fruit with red wines.
Okay.
But depending on the area that, but definitely Sauvignon Blancs are known to be very fruit forward. They're very aromatic, and so sometimes those are better paired with food that has less aromatic and
Right.
maybe just needs a little bit of acidity. Where some other grapes that maybe are less expressive could be even like a Merlot. Merlot is fantastic wine for maybe steak or dishes with a lot of fat,
Yeah.
because they bring a lot of acidity.
So let's say I've got a rack of lamb in front of me, and and let's talk Italian wines, because that's what we're really investigating here for the most part. Which Italian varietals would you pair with like lamb?
For me, and now that you're talking, I'm tasting the lamb in my
I'm
mouth.
starting to salivate myself.
The heavier I go with the wine, the more I cover that beautiful taste of the lamb. And so I want to go with a wine that is only a filler, so like a Chianti or like a Sangiovese, or even like a very young Nebbiolo, where the wine is only about the acidity and not about the fruit.
Well, that's interesting, because the impulse, I think, very often is, oh, I got the piece of lamb here, or maybe a big fillet in front of me, and it's like, oh, I need a heavy wine for it, as compared to you're saying, hey, don't try to like get them competing with each other. Get a complementary, maybe lighter red grape than the heavier ones.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point, and I always suggest everybody that I talk to, if you are undecided or at home, always try, especially if you think that something works best, try to open an opposite wine side by side, and you become your own teacher. So you're doing the experiment on your own, and you're allowing yourself to experience that.
Okay, so and now if I put in front of you a beautiful piece of fresh fish, red snapper, let's say, what wine are you picking to have with that?
The first thing that comes to my mind is an unoaked Chardonnay. It's a grape that everybody knows, but the critical part of this is the unoaked, where there hasn't been any manipulation, there hasn't been any tannic added to the wine. It's very simple, just a little bit of floral, and I'm just looking for a little bit of acidity and just leaving the fish alone to be what the fish is.
And what am I going to have with a great pizza? Now I got a great pizza sitting here. What am I pulling out?
The pizza for me is great with a fruity, young red wine, like a Montepulciano, a Dolcetto, a Valpolicella, something that screams youth and very low alcohol, and because of the pizza sometimes it's salty and it's big, you can have a whole bottle and have a lot of fun.
And if I'm doing, let's say, a cheese course, similar response to that?
Cheese course is is a very difficult answer because depending on the cheese coming from Italy or Europe, the cheese boards are very deep and vast, and so depending on the age of the cheese or the flavor profile, you want to add from a very young white wine to a very heavy old wine or to even a dessert wine. So cheese is it's very
specific to the type of cheese you're going to have. If I have a nice salami or prosciutto in front of me, what am I pairing with that?
So salami and prosciutto are synonymous of high fat, and so you need a high acidity wine. So again, you want to go with a white wine or a red wine that has high acidity. So usually younger wine and something very fresh.
So one of my aunts made the best homemade ravioli, right, with a ricotta inside. Usually red sauce, but sometimes it might be like a butter sage sauce. And is it the sauce that matters again? And what am I pairing if I'm doing butter sage versus a red sauce?
There matters also the filling. So you mentioned spinach,
Yep.
that they are green but very high acidity.
Yep.
Ricotta, that is a very poor, so not a lot of fat.
Right.
And you mentioned a little bit of red sauce.
Yeah.
So everything that you said to me as I'm analyzing has high acidity.
Right.
So I would like to have a lower acidity wine, maybe a white wine that is not as fresh, maybe a few years, or a red wine that it's a little bit more fruitful, just because I have all this acidity already in the dish.
Now, I know a lot of people like this particular pairing. They're saying, what wine do I drink with a really high quality dark chocolate?
It depends for me, and maybe this is not a fair answer, but it also depends from the chocolate because the world of chocolate is infinite.
Right.
You can have a high sugar chocolate, and again, you need maybe a very low sugar wine because you already have a lot of sugar in the chocolate,
Right.
or you have some of the purest 90-95 pure cocoa,
Right.
where you need the additional sugar
Sweetness, yeah.
that comes from the wine. So always when I do that pairing with chocolate, I have to look at what chocolate I'm serving to then decide what wine.
Let's do an example. So what's some of your favorite chocolates that you serve?
We have some Italian chocolates, Amano. We have some European like Lindt. There is a great chocolate producer here in Utah that makes worldwide chocolate.
Right. And then, and what wines do you suggest with those chocolates?
So usually the less sugar in the chocolate, I go with a more sugar in the wine, like a dessert wine, like a passito, a recotto, or a moscato are fantastic.
Explain what those are.
Recotto.
Recotto.
Recotto is a wine from Valpolicella that has a lot of sugar left in the fermentation, so dark. Almost, I would use in this term like chocolatey because it's very intense.
Right.
And has a lot of sugar.
And that comes from a red grape.
That comes from the red grape.
And
Then we have the Moscato, that it's a white wine that is made in a sparkling way. That it's from a grape that has a lot of sugar to begin with, and so it's a sparkling, very pleasant, peachy and sugary wine that goes well with a very dark, non-sweet chocolate.
Terrific. Let's say I'm having a roasted chicken. A lot of times maybe they're roasting chicken with like rosemary or certain herbs. So what do you pair with that?
White chicken for me is good with a good fat white wine. So very voluptuous in the nose and in the palate. Something it could be very good with some oak, with some age. Just something that really brings a little bit of fatness and deepness to the chicken.
Couple examples of those wines like that you would do?
I would say even Sauvignon Blancs, heavier or aged Chardonnays. In Italy, we have a lot of Trebbiano that can serve that purpose. Garganega up in the north of Italy. Or it's another grape that is very popular in Italy, in Tuscany, is Vermentino. That is just a burst of fruit that sometimes can complement the chicken that it's very poor. It's like...
So now let's get to my absolute favorite thing, and I have to imagine it depends on which food you're using it with, but truffles. You know, black truffles, white truffles. What wine am I having with truffles?
So some say that truffles have to be paired with the wine made in that area. So in Italy, there are 2 or 3 areas that are famous for truffles. One is Alba in Piemonte, then we have Umbria, and then we have Veneto. So generically speaking, because truffles are very potent, they're very powerful, you want to have a little bit calmer, weaker, gentler, just supporting wine, because it would be a shame to drink a Napa Valley Cabernet with a white truffle, because the Napa Valley Cabernet will cover it.
Right.
So you just want wines that will just be strong enough, but a little bit weaker than the truffles.
So if it's from D'Alba, then you're looking at Nebbiolo or
Nebbiolo, Barbera,
Barbera.
Definitely light Langhe Nebbiolos, and the surrounding areas of Piemonte are extremely good, like Gemme, like Gattinara, just on the outskirts of Piemonte.
And as we're going to discover, because you're taking us there,
Yes,
so we'll know what we mean when we say Nebbiolos, and what other grapes are in that region that where the truffles come from.
Absolutely. And we'll try it. We'll have some truffles, and we'll do an experiment of having a very heavy wine and a lighter wine, and you'll see that you do not want to fight with the truffles taste.
Now I get to introduce you to a living legend, a very unique human being. This is Yasuko Grovner. And with us is his daughter, Matea Grovner, who is translating for us and also is the heir apparent of Grovner Wines. This man is my type of hero, someone who had a vision, that was told that he can't do what it is that he set out to do, that bucked the system and went through a lot of years of toil to finally get to a point of success, and now he's celebrated throughout the world. You may have heard of these so-called orange wines. They're becoming very popular, especially in hipster circles. Well, Yasuko Grovner is the person that brought these to the world in recent history. Many others have now followed, and this man is just a legend in the winemaking world. So enjoy this interview. Yasuko, Matea, thank you very much for sitting and speaking with me today.
Thank you for having us.
And Matea, you'll be interpreting because Yasuko speaks Italian and Slovenian,
yes.
right?
He follows a little bit English, but he doesn't speak English, so he needs some translation.
So thank you for helping with translation, but you're also Yasuko's daughter.
Yes.
And have you been working in the wine business since you've been a little girl?
I actually studied winemaking, but I decided not to produce wine, and I follow all the not productive part. So he's mainly the wine man or the grape man,
Yes.
and I follow all the other things connected to the market. Marketing, all these things. My sister Jana, she's much more involved in the vineyard.
I see. So I'm going to ask Yasuko this question, or you'll ask for me. But I've met many winemakers. You think differently than them all. Why is that?
At a certain point, he understood that he had to change, and it was when he understood that it is not necessary in life to produce wine, or better, it's not only to earn money. And so he had to change most of the things he learned at school in order to reduce quantity and work only on quality.
So what are the main parts of your winemaking philosophy?
Diciamo che l'etica umana.
Producing in a high quality product is always connected to a high ethical value, which is even connected to the relationship and the normal life a person should have. The difference is that once you produce or you work or you live in this way, the income are not always the first thing, which is often the main part of an industrial wine production, which is strongly connected in reduction of all the cost in order to increase the incomes.
Yasuko, when I talk to other winemakers, especially around this region, he's like a legend to them. And it seems winemakers get very excited about his wines because they are so different. So what makes them different?
Ogni produttore
It's difficult to say that a wine is much better than another, or one is good, the other one isn't. Even because the wine is a kind of reflection of the winemaker. What's important is to be honest. It's like having children. You can't teach them. You don't have to behave in a bad way if you do this. So you don't have to tell lies. You have to be what you are, and you have to be honest. If you are not honest, all these things come even in wine in your life. And for him, this is something very important. What he says, it was what he's doing. And on this point, he's very, very strict.
Is the way that he makes wine the same way that he lives his life?
non
Can be in a different way.
It can't be in a
It
different
can,
way.
no.
It has to be that
Yes.
non
Wow.
non si può
You
parlare.
can't claim you produce natural wines and you live in a modern way. This doesn't mean we don't accept the progress, but if you are a farmer, your roots have to be in the soil, not in the technology.
Understood. Can you explain the process, maybe just one step at a time, on how you make your wines?
Fare-
Making wine is like searching about clean water. You have the clean water is only at the spring, not at the seaside. In winemaking, we are at the seaside, so at the end of the flow of the river. Making wine, it's much more going back to the nature. But in winemaking, we have more than 300 additives or products you can use during the winemaking process. And making wine is not anymore natural, but it's much more knowing the wine making or wine techno making. It's very important to have completely ripe grape. Ripe doesn't mean having a certain sugar percentage, but it's much more connected to the long life branch has with his mom, which is the vine. Then longer the grape can stay with his mom, then better will it be balanced.
It's interesting. So you refer to the grape as the child and the vine as the mother. So the longer they're connected, the more balanced or the better, more healthy the grape is.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is the idea.
So he ages his grapes or leaves his grapes on the vine much longer, much more ripe.
Yes,
And then what do you do with the grapes?
he compared grapes to a teenager, to a boy. At 18, you are supposed to be full-aged, but not an adult. So we need grapes, they are adults when we harvest them. We never harvest before October.
And then the grapes, you take them and you put them in the terracotta tanks, amphora tanks. Can you describe that and the fact that you put everything in the stems, the seeds, everything?
Diciamo che
In 1997, he had his first small amphora. It's a clay vessel. We call them amphora, despite the correct name should be kvevri, and they are small clay vessels, handmade. From 2001, all our wines are fermented and in amphoras. To arrive to this point, it took him almost 20 years, because he changed the cellar 3 times. In the 80s, the wines were fermented in small barrels, in barriques, and aged for at least 1 year in barrels and then in stainless steel tanks. In the mid-90s, he moved to skin fermented wines in big open wooden barrels, arriving then in the 2000 to the kvevri, to amphoras. It took him such a long time because he learned by doing, and until he arrived then to this, the most simple way to produce wine, but simplicity even always need perfection.
Ask him about the philosophy of simplicity and perfection.
The vine has the earth in order to produce grapes, and once the grapes are ripe, the earth allows them to get transformed into wine. So everything is strictly connected. For him, simplicity means that you take away everything which is not necessary. The Qvevri amphoras allowed him and helped him not to use any temperature condition. We don't have fridge, we don't use stainless steel tanks. All these things are not necessary anymore. And for him, simplicity is like in architecture, taking away or not having all the things that are not strictly necessary in order to have only what's exactly necessary.
Per arrivare all'originale.
Is this also part why in fermentation he leaves everything together, the stems, the seeds, the skins, for a year in the clay pot?
È solo
Only since 2 years he's not anymore the stemming. Before he used to the stem some of the grapes. 2 years ago he understood that if Mother Nature made the grape like is, which means with the stem there is a reason. Otherwise the grape would be like an apple with no stems. And if there are stems, there is a reason. If you preserve everything together, the stems help during the fermentation to control the volatile acidity, which is the worst problem you could have. And controlling it is a way to preserving the stems helps to reduce the impact of the evolution of volatile acidity. If you want to preserve the stems, you need to have perfectly ripe and perfectly healthy grapes. And this is sometimes the problem because it means that you should wait at least October before harvesting. And often in fall we have a lot of rain. If you have rain for many days, you could even lose a big quantity of grapes. But once your idea is to produce high quality, the quantity becomes not anymore so important.
So once you pick the grapes, you have them fermenting for 5 or 6 months in the clay pots, in the amphora. And then what's the next step in the process?
Bene, devo dire.
In order to make wine in this way, even the cellar after the vineyard has to be very simple. Here, reduce all the spraying, all these things, in order to bring to the cellar healthy but clean grapes. And the cellar has to be very simple. This is a cellar which use only 3 kilowatt of power to work because they are not big engines, because everything is so simple that there is no need about electricity. And this was for him many years ago an important point, and he's very happy because he has been able to do it. There are 2 different ways to make wine. One is following the market, which means recognizing what the market is asking for and produce this kind of wine or products. The other one is making wine. Not following the market, just trying to do your best, you are able to reach. Sometimes the market is recognizing this quality, sometimes not. This doesn't mean this is the highest quality ever. There are people, they don't understand this kind of production, this kind of quality. But for us, this is not such important because the important thing is to know what quality is and to always try to reach this quality.
Dose di zolfo.
When we harvest the grapes, we check them and we select them in the vineyards. The harvesting is handmade, and we bring to the cellar only the perfect ripe, perfect selected grapes. They are quickly crushed and they go into Qvevri, into amphoras, where they start the fermentation with the natural yeast. So we don't add any kind of selected yeast.
So it's just a natural yeast fermentation?
Yes.
Okay.
During the fermentation, we do the punch down because the juice is heavier than skins, and the skins, they come up, so we have to bring the skins back into the juice. And so the grapes are on the skins between 5 and 6 months.
And that's very unusual for especially a white grape, right?
It's true, but if you separate the skins from the juice, you separate the most part of the taste, and during the fermentation, the wine, the becoming wine, has all the time to take the good things from the skins, bringing them into wine. Once the fermentation, after 5-6 months, we press the skins, so we take out the wine from amphoras, we press the skins, and the wine only wine go back to Qvevri for the next 5-6 months. So altogether, the wine is preserved in amphoras between 10 and 11 months.
And this is in the ground in that big clay
Yes,
pot?
they are
Okay.
all underground. And after this year, almost year, the wines start the long aging process. The wines are preserved in big wooden barrels for the next 6 years.
Never stainless steel, just the big.
Never, we don't
Big
use
wooden
steel
barrels, okay.
because wine need to breathe.
Yeah.
And during this long period, the wine has all the time to get completely clean by itself.
Mm-hmm.
And the wines are bottled after 7 years. So we never release wines that are younger than 7.5, 8 years.
So you hold on to the wine till it's at least 7 or 8 years old.
Yes.
And why do you do that?
Bene,
The wine is preserved for almost 1 year in amphora and 6 years in barrels before being bottled for a very important reason. He wants to preserve the wine alive. The wine has all the time to get clean by itself and it's not necessary to filtrate it. In this way, we are able to preserve the 3 microorganisms. They transform most into wine, and there are yeast, bacterial, and enzyme. The human body hasn't been made to digest wine, or better, in order to digest, the human body needs yeast, bacterial, and enzymes. With not filtrated wines, we help our body to digest better.
batteri, enzimi.
The unfiltered wines have the yeast, the bacteria, and the enzymes in it. So when you're consuming it, your body can use the wine better. It's healthier, more natural.
This is the point.
Yeah.
Because once the fermentation is finished, all these microorganisms are still in wine, despite they are not working. And once you introduce them in your body, they restart working, they start living, helping you to digest.
And it's very interesting because in the health world, the general health and wellness world, it's a new thing that they're starting to understand how important microorganisms are for your body, to help your body to be healthy. So it's interesting that the tradition of, the long old tradition of being unfiltered, right, has those things in it so that your body can be healthier.
But it's the same thing reintroducing amphoras. In the past, people have much less scientific knowledge, but the praxis was much closer to the nature because it was important to respect it because they had no help from chemicals or other kind of things. The modern technology used to introduce. This doesn't mean we are against the progress, but there is a part of progress which is very useful and like having safer cars, having faster planes, having better computers. But what we introduce in ourselves has to be simple because despite the thousands of years, our body is still very, very simple. Our body can't digest microchips.
Yes.
The number 7 is strictly connected with his birthday, and is a number which follows him the whole life. If you check, it was not made on purpose. There are 7 amphoras on each side, and we couldn't decide it because we didn't know the size of amphoras. This is just an example. 7 is one of the magical numbers, and it's even the start of many of the trouble he had because he always wanted to make it better, and one of these points was to bring the wine to be bottled after 7 years.
Yasuko is 3rd generation in this.
Yes.
Okay, so now you're 4th generation. So what has it meant to receive from his grandfather and his father, what he learned, and also what it means to pass it on to you?
Every farmer dreams about having someone going on with his work, because once you have some earth, the fields, the vineyards, the grape, they are part of you, so it's impossible to separate. This is something very important, but the most important thing is the time you have to work, the time you have on this earth, to spend it well, doing things in your best way, even because after this, there is nothing which will rest after your life.
How would you like to be remembered as far as your impact on winemaking and your impact on the earth?
Ma penso che
He doesn't think he made something so special to need to be remembered in the future. For him, the most important thing is that when he goes to bed in the evening, he knows he didn't make anything wrong or bad, and he didn't hurt anyone. And if he would care about what other people think, he would never do what he made.
quello che sto facendo.
You have a special love for the Ribolo grape. Why?
This is something my dad transmitted him, because in the 60s, most of the producers started producing other varieties, and even we started working with Chardonnay, Sauvignon, Pinot Grigio, and many other conventional or international varieties. But when he used to taste the grapes and even the wines with his father, and when they arrived to the Ribolla barrel, his father was so satisfied that he was laughing. And this was for him something so important that in '82 he decided that one day he would be able to produce only Ribolla. It took him many years. His father used to say that other wines were made for the market, but Ribolla was our soul, what we are. And in '82 he decided at a certain point he dreamed about being able to produce only Ribolla, and finally in 2012 he made it, and now he produces only Ribolla grapes and Ribolla wine, because he's not able to produce something which is not in his heart. This doesn't mean that other grapes are not high quality, but in life you have even to choose, and he made his choice, and his choice is to produce Ribolla, which is the best expression of Berdacoglio. And many people speak about Ribolla, but after this they plant a lot of Pinot Grigio or Sauvignon because the market is asking about this. Sometimes you have even to teach something to the market.
Più richieste.
So this is also the same way that this is simplicity, just to do Ribolo grape, and also doing just what you love.
È un bel-
This is for him a big result, because nowadays the producers are producing what the market is asking. Being able to produce only what you love is a big deal. He always says that he produces wine for himself. What he's not able to drink, he sells. The world is so big that he hopes to be able to find some wine lovers that appreciate what he's doing and enjoying these wines.
di fare il vino. Penso che
He really cares about himself, about his healthness, and this is the best guarantee about the quality of what he's doing, because since he cares about himself, he cares about other people. You can't care about other people if you don't care about yourself. And making the same wine, or only one wine in the whole production, means that everything is made in the best way. When he was young, he believed that things that are good are the ones you like. He was wrong, because if something is good, it's good. You can like or not, but it doesn't mean that what you like is always good. But if something is good, it's good.
altro modo di vivere.
You were very generous to treat us, the whole crew, to lunch, and you opened up the beautiful Ribolo that you make. 2010, I believe, was the vintage. And it's not only, everybody was very excited about the wine, how they enjoyed it, and what the experience was. And it's not even just maybe how it tastes, but the color is different. The glass is different that you serve it in. Everything is a different experience. It's unique.
In wine world, there has been invented the so-called orange wines. He always says that his wine is amber, is not orange. And if a wine is orange, it means that the oxidation went so far that the wine is not anymore alive. His wines are amber because they are still full of life.
And I agree, I wouldn't look at that color and see orange. It does look like a deep amber. So we're in a very special room here, and I know that when we walked around, we couldn't step on these things. So what's around me here?
We are in the amphora cellar, so all around us we have these clay amphoras, and this is like 5,000 years of history. He believes that a farmer living and working in the 20th century, 21st century, should only go back in order to use all the knowledge people have from such a long period, and to go back to the clean water, because there is really nothing new to inventing. All the inventions all the new technology in farming is always connected to reducing the prices, not increasing the quality.
What's interesting, when he wanted to go back to this very, very old style, thousands of year old style of winemaking, using the amphora, the clay pots, putting them in the ground, no refrigeration, using the ground temperatures, etc. Was there anybody to learn from, or did he have to just figure it out himself?
No, look.
He had to learn it by himself, and even for this reason, to arrive to this point, he needed to change the cellar 3 times in order to clean it. It's just a matter of cleaning, taking away everything which is not necessary, and it's all a matter of cleaning the soul and cleaning the way you live. Simplicity, simplicity, and again simplicity.
So you're saying cleaning the soul. Is that what you said? Cleaning
Yes.
the soul and cleaning the way you live.
Yes.
It's quite a philosophy. What happened the first time he tried to do this?
Ero talmente.
When he changed, he was so sure about what he was doing that he didn't understood he was risking everything. A friend of him said, it's like if you went to the Nova Gorica casino, choosing a number and putting all your life or your work on this number, you could even lose everything. But he feels so sure, he feels so comfortable in doing this that he didn't thought about the risk he accepted. At the beginning, he lost most of the clients because most of them couldn't understand what he was doing, but new clients come, many of the old ones come back, and now things are much easier. He's very satisfied, he's very happy, but not because things are going well. He's satisfied because he's doing what he loves, and he's able to express his love in Ribolla, in his wines.
Vino che mi piace.
Any final thoughts that you have that you'd like to share with the people about wine and what wine means to life?
Il vino nella vita.
Wine is something very important in life, especially if you are able to transmit a part of soul. So you have an alive wine, and this is something you can do only if you work in a clean way, in a natural way. Another point which is very important is that in wine production, the terroir is very important. Until he went away and he visited most of the important wine region, he didn't really believe in the potential and quality of Collio Berda soil and terroir. And then more he used to travel, the more he learned, and he understood what an incredible region we live in. And we have an incredible soil. The climate is perfect for wine making, for growing grapes, and the quality only came if you reduce quantity. It's not necessary producing a high quantity if you are not able to have quality, and this should be the point in everything.
La può negare.
Well, again, I want to say thank you for sharing not only your philosophy about wine, but your philosophy of life, because it seems like it's one and the same.
È quello che è molto importante.
Something very important in producing quality wines is to get elderly, because until you are young, you have many other things to think about. And once you solve all your life questions, you can dedicate all your attention, all your care on what you produce. In his case, it's wine. This is not to say that young people are not able to produce good wines. If they will be lucky and will produce well, once they will have gray hair, and they will be good producers too. So it's just a matter of time if you are good.
That's good. Grazie.
You can see we are in the aging cellar. We age our wines in this big Slavonian oak cask for at least 6 years.
6 years in here.
Yes.
Wow.
And so we still have the 2011, which will be bottled in a few weeks. So this will be the next release. And so for 6 years, the wines are preserved here before bottled.
Wow, that's unusual practice, right?
It is, but it's important for us to release wines that are ripe, they are completely mature. Wines people can enjoy, and as soon we release them.
So when you release them, they're ready to drink.
Yes, but despite this, you can preserve them even for many years.
Yes.
Some of our wines, even from the end of the 90s, were still available.
Yes.
So they are wines, since we never force them, they ripe following the natural timing. They can be preserved for a long period. What's unusual is that they are white wines, and most of the people believe that red wines are supposed to be long aging.
Yes. So the philosophy is that the customer shouldn't have to buy the wine and wait.
We believe that this is a matter of respect. Once you buy a wine,
Yes.
you should be able to enjoy it suddenly. But if you want to preserve it, you should be able to do it. So
Yes.
you should, as customer, you should be able to decide what to do with the bottle you bought.
Yes. Ah, interesting. Yes, because most wineries, they release their wines, but you're not supposed to drink them yet.
Okay,
Yeah.
Which means you are doing the financial part for these wineries.
Because you're right. When I buy wine, I'm having to pay for it then, but it's not right for me to drink it then. So you're saying you will hold the wine until it's ready to drink, so the customer doesn't have to pay for that.
But think about this, what's the point in going to the grocery and buy an apple you have to preserve 3 weeks in your kitchen before eating it? No one will do it, usually.
Yes.
And we should do the same.
Yes, very interesting. Well, that's so the mentality. How would you describe this approach toward wine making and having these types of relationships with your customer?
We try to respect the natural times and the natural timing. So when things are ready. So we don't have to hurry them up or to push them. It's just a matter of respect. And once you start respecting the nature, you can't decide not to respect people or things like this. Everything is included in this.
How long will these tanks last?
If you are good in preserving them well, they can last for 30, 40 years.
Oh, yes.
But the difficult thing with wood is that you have always to keep it completely clean. It's quite easy for wood to start having bad smell. Amphora doesn't have this kind of problem because amphora is made of clay, and clay is a neutral material.
And that's with the first year you're in the
The first year, wines are preserved in amphora, or Kvevri is the correct name.
Yes.
The fermentation is made there, and the first aging is made there.
Yeah.
Until the Middle Age, amphora was the only wood used for winemaking.
Yes.
And then, during the Middle Age, people become more and more confident in making barrels.
Yes.
And the big plus of barrels is that it's much easier to transport them.
Yes,
And
yes.
they don't break so easily.
Right.
And for this reason, people quickly moved from Kvevri amphoras to barrels.
Does the clay breathe at all?
There is an oxygen exchange, but they are covered inside with beeswax.
Beeswax.
Yes,
inside.
otherwise the liquid, the wine would go outside.
Right.
But the beeswax embed the exit
Yes.
of the liquid, but permit the
Oxygen.
oxygenation. As low and low oxygenation is
Very
always there.
interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So these are American that you planted
Yes.
vines, and then you're grafting European vines?
Yes.
So he
And-
just takes a little piece of this and puts it into the plant?
Yes,
And
and
it
now
mixes?
the next it close it,
Yeah.
and now the European plant this is Ribolla will take over and will be the strongest one and will continue being the vine which will grow will be a Ribolla one.
Wow. And you can buy them pre-grafted, right?
Yes.
But you do like to do it in the vineyard because you think, why?
Because we have more and more problem with already grafted vines, more and more diseases.
Yes.
And the problem is we are not able to preserve vines for a long period. You know, quality grapes come from elderly vines. And if you start having diseases when the vines are 12, 15 years old, this is far too early.
Yes.
And we hope to be able in this way to preserve our vines at least for the next 50, 60, maybe 70 years.
So the disease that you're trying to defend against through the grafting is what?
It's Phylloxera, which is a small insect which is eating the American leaves, but the European rots. And this was at the end of the 18th century a big disease in Europe. So in few years the viticulture, the grape production almost disappeared until people understood the problem and they find this technical solution which is the grafting.
The grafting.
Okay.
And so basically by merging the American and the European, it saves both the leaves and the roots?
Yes. So you save the European leaves and you have the American rots.
Now these are young. How long before these vines will be ready for
the production?
Yeah.
It will take 3 to 4 years to have the first real production. Usually we don't use the grapes before 5 to 7 years in order to have well-balanced vines producing better grapes.
And then how many years will these vines be good for yielding fruit?
We hope at least the next 50 to 70 years.
Wow.
This is the reason. You could even buy already grafted vines. What we see is that they usually start having problems when they are less than 20 years old. So we grafting in the vineyard, we need much more time. It's much slower, the work, and we basically lose 2 or 3 years at the beginning, but we don't say that this is a loss, this is an investment in a longer life of wine.
So it's very interesting because if your father is planting and grafting these vines, it's his grandchildren that will be still harvesting fruit, right?
It's true, but farming is like this. You can't farm for today.
Yeah.
A farmer should always be projected to the future and to the far future.
Wow. In so many ways, I left this interview and this experience with Grovner very inspired. I still to this day enjoy those wines, and whenever I see them on menus, I am ordering them. Something special about them, and of course, knowing the history behind them makes them that much more enjoyable. I was really excited to share this with you. What's the ideal temperature for storing wine?
Ideal temperature is usually cooler than 65 degrees, but one of the important things that I see not done in almost all the homes is light. Light can damage the wine as much as the temperature.
Oh, really?
So a dark place on the cooler side is ideal.
And you say under 65, like, you know, I store mine probably like the high 50s. That's
yes,
kind of, yeah.
Lower than 65 or 70s, but light is very, very important. Too much light can affect the color, the structure, and the age of the wine as much as the temperature. And
So when I see sometimes these wine cabinets that people have, you know, that are refrigerated, I see sometimes they have light in them, like, you know, to kind of feature the wine, but you should shut that off.
and you can leave it on because the lights on those fridges is a blue light, so it's made on purpose that it's not affecting the wine.
So blue light's okay.
Is the sunlight. The sunlight kills the color, kills the age of the wine, really as much as the temperature.
And that's why they call them caves, right? They want them away in the caves.
You want them in a cold, dark, forget them, and just take them out only to drink them.
Perfect. Any other advice on the proper way to store bottles?
I think one of the suggestions that depends on also the how long you want to store the wines. But if you have an idea that you want to store them for a long time, it's always good to preserve the labels as well. So a little bit of foil or saran wrap on the bottle will preserve intact the label. So when you take it out in years, the label is perfect. And also I would wrap the top of the bottle so there is even throughout the time and the age, there is even less chances that the cork would give away.
Right.
In many parts of the world or the country, there are climate conditions that dry out the cork.
So humidity is important too.
So humidity is very important.
Yeah. And the wines should definitely be laid down, right? So
Yes.
that the cork stays wet.
Yes, so always lay down, 45 degrees would be best. So some of the cork is also not exposed because too much exposure to the cork also can be detrimental.
Oh, really? So rather than flat, having it up a little.
Just
tilt.
having it up a little bit would be ideal, but flat is important because you want the wine to touch the cork to keep it moist.
Right.
I find that the wine world is very welcoming and wants you to come in. I think they would much rather introduce you to wine than have you drink a cocktail. Typically, people who like wine, because it's something you would like to share with someone. It's a pleasure. It's a great joy to drink really good wine and compelling. Just the same way that people get really excited about music and want other people to hear that music. That's really how real wine people are.
In the end, I think wine is meant to be shared. Wine is kind of the embodiment of humanity. It's you can see politics, you can see economics, you can see geography, you can see history. Like you're drinking humanity in a glass, and I think that's the most exciting part because you can learn so much through it, and that's what I love about it and why I continue to study and drink it.
When you say Borda, you mean Rebula, and we try to express sense of territory, sense of tradition of this land. Let's put good feelings in the wine. Let's do our best. Imagine that you are artist and you try to express you through the wine, through the product.